Hey folks, Dr. Mike here for the Making Progress channel. Today's video number 46, right? Scott the video guy?
Oh man, good question.
I think so. And the title is, well, we'll see what title Scott the video guy picked for the actual YouTube video, but why I don't have any self-esteem. What? Is this a cry for help? Maybe. In this video, we'll talk about what self-esteem is, what low self-esteem correlates to, what high self-esteem correlates to, and that what kind of journey may exist for you within the realm of self-esteem and where that journey might come to an end. It seems to have come relatively to an end for me. I thought this was so curious an experience that I wanted to share it with you guys, and maybe you guys can get something out of it that can help you in your daily life. So first, what is self-esteem? It's something like an individual's subjective evaluation of their own self-worth. And it encompasses generally some beliefs about oneself like, well, I am competent, I am worthy. It can reflect emotional states, triumph, pride, despair, shame, on the upside and downside. And essentially, self-esteem reflects how much we sort of appreciate and like ourselves, and it influences how we think and feel and behave in various aspects of life. You're probably pretty familiar with this idea. No controversy here, by the way. I'm not arguing against that. It's very, very good. Now, low self-esteem correlates to a bunch of stuff. Before I read off this list, I have to make something very, very, very clear, which is not often made clear. Even when I talk to ChatGPT every now and again, you got to re-ask it some questions to make sure it clears this kind of thing up. And here's what I'm talking about. These are correlates of low self-esteem. And that means we don't know if they are causes of low self-esteem, if they cause low self-esteem, or if they're unrelated and just happen to be correlated together by sort of chance or off by another variable. For example, it's been shown that ice cream consumption is very tightly correlated to shark attack. You think, what is it? That the sharks like the ice cream? They can smell it from when you're eating it on a boat? Nope. It's just that shark attacks happen a lot more during beach season because there's people in the water at higher rates, and people eat more ice cream when they're on the beach and during beach season. So if you noted that shark attack and ice cream consumption are correlated, if you try to thread the narrative of, well, I think shark attack causes more ice cream consumption somehow, or I think ice cream consumption causes shark attack somehow, then you would just be completely wrong, just non-starter. And so some of these, I might try to give you my feel of which way the arrow of causation mostly points. Sometimes it can be bidirectional, and sometimes it can be no relation at all. But from these, we can kind of tell that generally people that have low self-esteem via either cause or effect, but probably by both. Low self-esteem is partially what causes some of these bad things. But in a major way, these bad things cause low self-esteem. But as you can see, there's maybe a little bit for potential for some people to kind of spiral on both ends and end up in a not great place. So for example, low self-esteem correlates to increased susceptibility to anxiety and depression. When you have a lower self-worth, that might be from the same reasons that you have anxiety and depression, bad life circumstances, etc. It might be that bouts of anxiety and depression make you so unable to do what you normally thought was what you do well that you decline in self-esteem because of that transiently. Sure as possible. Could be totally unrelated, as with all these. Low self-esteem correlates to having less popularity. This is definitely bidirectional. People like people that have higher self-esteem more. But if you have lower self-esteem, people tend to gravitate to you less. So if you have lower self-esteem, people gravitate to you less. But when people like you more, it tends to raise your self-esteem. When people like you less than you'd like, it might lower it in some cases. So particularly for sensitive individuals who want attention, but because of their already low self-esteem, don't get the attention they deserve, that actually tends to spiral their self-esteem down substantially. Whereas if you really like attention, you get a lot of it, and that increases your self-esteem and it gives you more attention, then it's a spiral that goes upward. Low self-esteem correlates to harder and more poorly received conversational flows. People with high self-esteem tend to just get along really well in conversations and move and groove. People with lower self-esteem often can't converse as fluidly, can't maintain eye contact as well, can't maintain a certain emotional hue to the conversation. And that's definitely both cause and consequence there. People with low self-esteem have much less ability to generate romantic attraction. That could be, again, probably bidirectional. If you feel like you are unattractive for objective reasons, like you're actually relatively unattractive, you might have lower self-esteem because of an objective analysis of, well, I'm not really attractive and I don't feel good about that. But then also self-esteem itself is an attractor, just like it is with popularity. So when you have low self-esteem, potentially from no good reason or potentially for good reasons, that low self-esteem perpetuates less attraction than you marginally would find in a higher self-esteem state. Low self-esteem correlates to procrastination and lack of motivation. Again, probably bidirectional there. Especially comes up the idea that if you have really low self-esteem, you got to like try hard for yourself, for your future. But if you don't really care much for yourself, for your future, because your self-esteem sucks, it's tough to get motivated and it's tough to resist procrastination because, like, why bother? Substance abuse, of course, may be bidirectional as well. You had low self-esteem, it leads you to substance abuse. People with substance abuse generally have probably relatively dilapidated lives, which cause even more objectively based low self-esteem. Folks with low self-esteem have more difficulty handling stress and setbacks. It's probably also bidirectional. People with low self-esteem have negative body image. Now, that's almost certainly bidirectional in the following ways. If you don't have a great body compared to objective normative reference standards for your age and gender, then you might have some low self-esteem about that. And if you have low self-esteem, in many cases, that low esteem drives your body image even further than it would be objectively realistic. So if, let's say if we measured everyone on their attractiveness in your school, let's say from a rank of 1 to 100, if you're rank 45 on attractiveness, which means not in the top half, but just pretty close to it, that might give you some initial low self-esteem. But if you have that low self-esteem, it starts to mess with your perception. And then you don't feel like you're 45, you feel like a 25. And then so there's two effects there potentially. And folks with low self-esteem tend to exhibit more defensive or aggressive behavior. This is kind of like the beta or gamma or whatever dog, non-alpha dog in the fight situation, where if you feel like you're at the bottom of the totem pole in your own mind, then people who push you, you sort of have a nothing to lose mentality. You know you don't have very far to be pushed, so you might get real defensive and aggressive real quick. You're essentially trying to protect something, and that something is the very, very fragile ego that you have inside of you. So it makes a lot of sense that would work that way. Now, on the opposite end, what does high self-esteem correlate to? Again, correlate. I'll try to ascertain a little bit of the causative structure. Again, I'm just guessing here. Educated guessing, but guessing nonetheless. Greater life satisfaction. I mean, that's obviously highly likely to be bidirectional. When your life is objectively awesome, it's much easier to have high self-esteem. And if you have high self-esteem that tilts your lens to a much more optimistic view of things, and then you have artificially greater life satisfaction. Better performance at work and at school, again, bidirectional. If you have bad performance, it's hard to have high self-esteem for any reference individual on average. Though funny enough, on average in the United States, that people that perform the very, very best at school typically have lower esteem of how they perform at school than the people who perform the very, very worst, because those people don't generally give a shit. But better performance at work and at school, it's that same thing. It's an objective reference value. If you have amazing performance at work and at school, people tend to make you aware of that, and you're aware of that. It can raise your esteem. And if you have high self-esteem, your assessment of how well you're doing at work and at school is a little bit rose-colored. And that means you ascertain your performance and how it's going even better. So some aspects of performance are subjective. And another thing is, if you're doing well at school and you feel good about yourself doing well at school, it's easy to keep doing well at school because you're like, this is great. I just keep doing it. I'm doing the thing. If you're really trying hard at school, but you're doing very poorly, typically it's kind of a self-extinguishing problem. Obviously, there's ways out of it for sure, but if you have low self-esteem and you're doing pretty bad, it's kind of tough to do better. Folks with higher self-esteem have healthier relationships. Again, almost certainly bidirectional in that case. If you have shitty relationships, sometimes really difficult to have high self-esteem. If you have amazing relationships, completely supportive, awesome people around you that tell you the shit all the time, having high self-esteem is much more likely. And of course, as a person of low self-esteem, you tend to be the person in a relationship that kind of promotes the unhealthy parts of it. And the people you gravitate towards and the people that end up being around you are also not that great. If you have pretty high self-esteem, you gravitate towards great people and you are a really big healthy part of all of your relationships. So it strengthens the relationship health there. You have an easier and more well-received conversational flow, same as last time. It's when you start from an easy flow of conversation when you already have high self-esteem, you have so many great easy flowing conversation. Like you just, man, that guy, the waiter, he's like, see, you have tip, see. And the girl, she's like, man. And, just like one of these, like the man of the hour kind of feelings. That kind of feeling gives you even higher self-esteem. And if you have that kind of feeling from having high self-esteem, you're in more situations in which people greatly approve of you and kind of feel your swag a lot. And feeling your swag a lot, feeling like you're the man, because of that increased conversational flow, gives you even higher self-esteem. So it's a lot of these are kind of positive reinforcing loops. More popularity for similar reasons that it's less in the downside. Much more ability to generate romantic attraction. One of the things that especially females look for in males is they're trying to figure out where you are on the totem pole of alpha male to whatever. And if you really feel like you're the fucking man, truly deep in your heart, then other people who pick up on you and your vibes, and just almost all girls, just 90% of female attraction to you is completely sub or unconscious. Just pick up on really subtle vibes you might not be aware of, like your eye contact, your facial expressions, how you're moving, how you're sitting, how you're presenting, how you're standing, how you're talking, etc. And so if you have a really high self-esteem, all of those fall into line of like any girl that talks to you has a higher probability of thinking that, geez, this guy's the fucking man. And the other girl that wasn't there for the conversation, she's like, really? This is the guy in the picture? She's like, yeah, this guy's the man. And she's like, but really? He looks like whatever. She's like, I don't know, man. It's just like, he's just kind of the man. You can never put her finger on it, but it's because you have high self-esteem and everything you project is that you're the man because you feel like you're the man. If you truly deeply feel something, then all of your subconscious cues align and all of your body positioning changes, your facial, your tone of voice and everything down the line. And all of a sudden, like people think, oh, that guy thinks so highly of himself. They don't explicitly think this, but implicitly think if that guy feels so highly about himself, maybe he's kind of the fucking man, They start to believe it, become more attracted to you on average. People with high self-esteem are more resilient to stress. This is a trippy one. Definitely some confounding there going on where when you're in good health and good spirits and good everything else, you're just more resilient to stress. And that might also cause you to have high self-esteem because things are going well. If things are going not so well for you, you may be sick or in a precarious financial situation, then you're like less resilient to stress and also have lower self-esteem. Not that one causes the other, but they both kind of aggregate with the same good or bad things about your life. People with high self-esteem have a lower risk of mental health issues. This is almost certainly bidirectional, whereby if you know you have mental health issues, it's very difficult to have the highest esteem possible. If you know that you have pretty good mental health, then at least that's not holding you down. And of course, having high esteem is just better for your, I don't want to call it mental health, but experience inside your head. I think the term mental health on a totally random aside is insanely overused. I think most people just, what they should be saying is, I'm just not having a really great time right now, but they end up saying like, I'm struggling with my mental health. Like, no, the guy at the fucking psych ward is struggling with mental health. You're just having a bad day. But there's definitely an esteem factor in that. Positive body image, again, bidirectional. If you look fucking amazing, it's tough to have really shit self-esteem. On average, you'll have higher self-esteem just appraising how you look compared to other people. Like if you woke up tomorrow and you were like in Adonis's body, you probably wouldn't feel too bad about it. So there's definitely that. But also, again, how you view yourself is body image. And well, with high self-esteem, you generally tend to look at like, like if you have a little bit of chub, kind of like little love handles or some shit, low self-esteem, you're like, I'm the worst person in the world. I'm the ugliest thing that's ever been made. With high self-esteem, you're like, I love handles and I'm still the man. Woo! Yeah, they're not, they're cool. I don't know. They make me like a real person. I'm not some fitness freak. God damn, this guy even has better body image. When you have high self-esteem, every kind of self-image is better. As a matter of fact, body image is just like one kind of one factor of your self-esteem if you think about it. And folks with higher self-esteem tend to have better leadership abilities. A lot going on there. One, in order for people to listen to you, you generally have to have higher self-esteem because of all that unconscious signaling stuff. People don't find you compelling if you have low self-esteem. In order to have good leadership abilities, you probably went through the dominance hierarchy a little bit and you're towards the top of it. Almost by definition, that's how good leaders exist. And then you'll probably have high self-esteem from having ascended to all those categories and a bunch of other stuff going on. So none of this is really super, super straightforward, but it makes sense. It totally makes sense. Now, how can you improve your self-esteem? We have an earlier video that's similar to this one, so I'll try to recapitulate and add a few more things. Improving your self-esteem, by the way, is a very, very worthwhile task if it's low. And I'll talk about this more a bit later when we get more to the very, very fine point of this. Getting a more attractive body for yourself by lifting weights, doing physical activity, eating properly over time can definitely improve your self-esteem. Again, if you woke up in an Adonis body tomorrow, would you feel worse or better about yourself? Probably better. You can wake up in an Adonis body in 6 months or 12 months or a year and a half, however long it takes you in a particular case, at the very least a way better body. And look, like, it's become fashionable in some circles to say it's all in your head. And you can kind of learn to love and appreciate your body no matter what it is. And also, since we're all in the victim Olympics together, people who are fit and lean will bitch about like, yeah, but I know that to you guys, I look fit and lean, but inside my own head, like I still feel fat. Like there's definitely a small fraction of people that feel like that. But on average, people that are objectively more attractive feel really goddamn good about it. It's not rocket science. And those people who say it doesn't matter, you say, okay, if I had a magic pill to turn you into like a 350 pound, like orc looking motherfucker, would you take it? They're like, oh, well, hold on. What? No, I wouldn't do that. All right. And you take, the health at every size people who are super fat and say it's okay and that they love it. You see, give them a magic pill, which actually was already invented. It's called Ozempic, semaglutide. If you give them that, it's okay. You take this, you become leaner. Do you want to do it or no? Are you still health at every size? They're like, yeah, no, health at every size. Give me that fucking pill. Give me that fucking pill. Almost nobody turns it down. So getting a more attractive body will, in many cases, raise your self-esteem substantially. Now, some people, it just doesn't do anything. In some people, it's a very small thing. And many people, they kind of habituate to it. Like once their body's cool, they get used to it and their self-esteem goes back down to genetic baseline. By the way, a huge fraction of your self-esteem is just straight up genetic. But getting a more attractive body can definitely help, especially if you're not a big fan of your body. If your body doesn't really mean much to you, getting a more attractive body is not going to do a whole lot. Next is becoming capable at anything. High levels of capability bleed self-esteem into every part of your life. Especially if you become very, very good at something, like one of the best people in some kind of local zone, that's really, really good. It's especially true if this really thing you're good at, it makes you lots of money. That definitely adds something, but it's not required. Just the internal status of feeling like you're competent at a thing or really goddamn good, it makes you feel pretty fucking good. Like if you're a purple belt in jiu-jitsu and one of the days that, rolling, like the brown belts and black belts weren't there, they were off at a competition or something, and it was just you and a bunch of blue belts and white belts, people ranked below you, and you kind of beat the shit out of everyone, not in a mean-spirited way, just because you're better, and you didn't get beat up at all. You walk to your car differently that day. You're like, dude, I'm the man. It feels great. You're not the fucking best grappler of all time, not even close. But like in that local little zone for just that little bit, you were a little bit kind of the best, and that feels really, really good. Positive self-talk can definitely help on the margins. It's not this huge, crazy thing, but for some people it works. I did it for years, and it works because self-esteem, as I'll get to a little bit, is a little bit of a lie. And a part of that lie is the little voice in your head tells you that you ain't shit, you're not going to become shit, blah, blah, you suck, etc. It's mean things. And that voice is kind of unconscious. It's just your GPT just pushes that up as the next prompt to yourself. Like, you suck. Man, GPT 4.me sucks. But if you consciously talk back a little bit or talk independently and start filling your mind with other ideas about yourself, it can add up over time. The best kinds of positive self-talk are the kinds that are true. And so if you tell something about yourself that's true and that is kind of nice, that's great. And then you can do that pretty regularly. Again, you have to be regular with it. Sometimes morning mantras are great. Maybe like a bullet pointed list of 5 to 10 things that you read out loud to yourself every morning as you're sitting with your cell phone on the toilet. I start every morning. And, you tell these things, and hearing it over and over and over helps. It helps a little bit. This isn't a huge thing. Some people need all the help they can get. I sure did when I was younger. And then so like I actually used to have like in my room in college, I had a couple papers or a couple of sheets of paper posted on the wall that said like 5 to 10 things that were really positive self-talk. And I read them all the time, and they sunk in at some point. Friendship circle, big for self-esteem. Supportive versus toxic friends. If you have friends that generally think you're fucking awesome, and even though they razz you as a joke, which my friends all do, deep down in more sort of personal conversations and various admissions, etc., they, tell you you're fucking awesome. And if you ever ask them, that can be nice, because they could be like, dude, of course you're the fucking man. Why do you think I hang out with you? Those kinds of friends are fucking great. And if everyone around you thinks you're awesome, it's a little tougher to walk around thinking you're not. That shit sinks in sooner or later. If everyone around you thinks you're not awesome and digs at you but never gives you any compliments or never any sign that they really like you, especially folks that are kind of energy vampires, people that like just bitch and moan to you and complain and, just negative influences in your life, especially when they're closer friends, that's kind of a no-go. That'll definitely bring your self-esteem down. So one of the trippy journeys about improving your self-esteem is there's lots of stuff you can do for yourself. Mostly it's self-work. But at some point, you might not have to do this, but you might have to kind of look at your people you're around, especially friends, because friends are almost always just voluntary. Like you don't really choose your coworkers. You don't choose your fellow students. You sure as shit don't choose your family, but you do choose your friends. And so you might have to take a look around and be like, I'm really on this self-esteem journey. Who the fuck here is with me? Not saying you need to gather all 12 people around at the fucking table. Call out Judas, the usual thing. But it might come time where we're like, I really like hanging out with Frank, but Frank is a miserable cocksucker, and I always just feel more miserable on Frank. So I'm gonna try to like bring that to Frank's attention. I'm gonna try to help Frank. But if he's like, nah, I'm good, fuck you, then I'm just not gonna see Frank as often. And that's probably a good idea. Another one from an older lecture that we that listened to together, hopefully, becoming proficient in combat. This is especially true for males, less true for females. I think for females, the corollary would be like become insanely beautiful or something like that, or as beautiful as you could possibly be. A little bit different, but same kind of similar idea. The ability to fight other people, especially other men, for status is deeply rooted inside almost every male. And so if you've gotten really proficient at combat, your ability to have really low self-esteem is tougher to pull off. And your ability to have really high self-esteem is like, well, yeah, I am the fucking man. It makes sense. It's something that isn't even explicit. You feel differently. If you're good at fighting and have beaten a lot of people up, it stays with you for a very, very long time, possibly forever. Another one, and this is a big one, though it is a bit of a head fuck, getting female attraction approval. Attraction/approval, rather. Same thing, really. Getting it a lot can boost your self-esteem substantially. Now, does getting laid boost your self-esteem? Yeah, hell yeah, it does. But more than the actual act of getting laid, what boosts your esteem the most is females vying for your attention. Obviously vying for your attention. In your DMs, in real life, in your email, on your Insta, on your text, whatever. Like fucking like water leaks in a fucking sinking ship. They're coming from all over. And if lots of women of sexually reproductive age that are attractive consistently vie for your attention and want to be around you, and sometimes, maybe often, tell you like you're the fucking man and when are we going to do this, it's real difficult to stay real low self-esteem for a real long time. As a matter of fact, when someone very attractive that you're attracted to sort of hints, or more than hints, that like, yeah, you're the fucking shit, that could be a big, big deal for self-esteem, at least in the short term. And a lot of that happening over the long term, definitely fucks with you. I guarantee you, if he asked Hugh Hefner towards the end of his life, like, hey, do you have low self-esteem? He'd be like, what? Like, watch this. I'm going to be having sex with 8 of the hottest 10 people that have been alive in the last 50 years right now. You're like, okay, fine. There's no way you can fall off that throne. The thing is that it's cool to know that the approval of females can raise your self-esteem substantially, but it's a tough recommendation to give because, like, look, you can get a more attractive body. That's just between you and some fucking work. You can become more capable in anything. Same idea. Positive self-talk is the easiest of all of these. Supportive and toxic friends, I mean, you can curate your friends. It's tougher, but definitely something you really can do unilaterally. You don't have to ask anyone's approval to get rid of them in your friend circle. You can become proficient in combat to a huge extent just by putting in the work over time. The thing with the female attention is that it's a little different than these because your ability to attract women is going to be based on how high your self-esteem is to a huge extent. Like if you're feeling your fucking swag all the time, bitches out here left and right. If you're not feeling your swag, if you feel like kind of meh, more like kind of like, oh, I'm worthless, it's dry out here, fellas. And then how the hell am I supposed to step on that first step of female approval if that first step requires me to already have high self-esteem? But I'm getting on that step to get myself high self-esteem. It's like, someone's like, yeah, like you can leave the atmosphere if you start the rocket booster at 50,000 feet. And you're like, fuck am I supposed to get to 50,000 feet? They're like, oh, rocket booster. You're like, what? But I guess I'm just on the ground for forever. There are absolutely ways around this, but it is a bit of a problem where you have to layer in things and really work at it for a bit. The trippy thing on the plus side is once you get that train rolling, it rolls faster and faster. It gathers momentum. Here's how. If you're dry as fuck, it causes you potentially to have lower self-esteem, which does not improve your chances of getting any wetter. And then that kind of careens out of control into you're just a fucking incel. On the other end, if you start getting some of that ushy-gushy, then that makes you feel quite nice. And then you feel quite nice. And other women are like, feels quite nice. He looks like he has high self-esteem. Let's give him more of that same thing he seems to be getting all the time. And then it careens out of control. And all of a sudden you're at the testing center for HIV. And they're like, look, I didn't even know people get this anymore, but you have every possible strain of the shit. Here's a pill. You're good. 2024. But seriously, stop. Wrap it up for the love of God. So it's kind of a self-reinforcing situation, which a lot of stuff with self-esteem tends to be. And lastly, talk therapy. You actually can pay a psychologist money to talk to you and tell them, hey, my problem that I want to come to you, because people come to psychologists with millions of different kinds of problems. You can legit say, look, I'm struggling with low self-esteem. Oh my God, they have a fucking toolkit they can open up on your ass. One of the best things psychologists can do is cognitive behavioral therapy, where they basically go, let's talk about all of the assumptions you have about yourself and why they make you feel bad. And some of the ones that are like legit, they're like, yeah, okay, fine. That's a thing. Let's leave that alone for a second. Let's talk about some other things. And some of the reasons you tell yourself you have low self-esteem, they're just dog shit reasons. Like someone could be like, yeah, man, it's low self-esteem. It's just like, I don't know, man. I just placed third at a powerlifting meet. Just kind of really wanted first. They're like, okay. So your low self-esteem is because you feel like you got third place. That's it. They're like, no, I'm just don't feel strong. Like, okay. So how much stronger are you than the average person? And you're like, I don't know, like infinity. They're like, huh? It's like, you think Batman feels really, really bad all the time because Superman has like more powers? Like, no, I think Batman feels however the fuck he wants to. Like, he does not feel less than compared to the average person by a long shot. Like, okay. So your whole idea that just because you got third at a powerlifting meet that you should have low self-esteem for being weak is nonsense. You're not weak. Like, oh, okay. Huh. That is true. It's kind of fucking stupid in retrospect for me to think that. And then all of a sudden you think through it some more, you talk therapy through it some more, and that thing kind of goes away. And then I don't really have that bad of self-esteem anymore because a lot of my reasons, quote unquote, for having self-esteem were just based on kind of nonsense that never really examined in my head. Somebody external to you can really examine the shit out of what's going on in your head. So all this is all really, really great stuff. Now, if you're using some of these tools and strategies to build up your self-esteem, on occasion you might want to kind of test your self-esteem to see like, how's it doing? Because self-esteem can be tested. The testing of self-esteem, actually, if you pass the test, so to speak, it can raise your self-esteem. And if anything else, it tells you like, hey, like, how much of my swag am I feeling? Because it's kind of hard to tell sometimes. There are at least two ways I know of to test self-esteem. One is by asking folks to roast you. This is usually best done with close friends and family. Family, I don't know how well they can roast you. I'm sure pretty well. Friends can roast the fuck out of you. But if it occurs with good friends in a mutually nurturing environment where everyone knows it's all jokes, you can tolerate it pretty well. And even if you have not so great self-esteem and that roasting actually helps you laugh at the matter and realize like you have all these bad things about you, but people still like you a shitload enough to roast you and be your friend. And then it makes these things, because they're joked about now, well, they're not so serious anymore. Like, like what the fuck would Scott, roast me real quick. Tell me something true about me that's not that great.
You have a small, weird-looking penis.
It's the worst penis in the world. But see, even that's not true. I'm sure there are worse penises. See, I made a superlative statement, right? So if I can hear something like that from Scott, maybe it's true. Maybe I do have an ugly dick. But then it's just true. Who gives a shit? He doesn't seem to care. He's still my friend. And if it's not true, it's just hilarious. And then what the hell am I worried about? So roasting, if it gets not roasting, but just making fun of you, can depreciate your self-esteem significantly. But if it's comedic roasting and it's well tolerated, it can be awesome. Great way to test, like, hey, like how much self-esteem do you have? I mean, did you guys see me flinch at that shit? No, I'll tell you all about my self-esteem in a bit. But roasting is really good. I'll put it to you this way. If you're so goddamn fragile you can't hear jokes from friends, you for sure have low self-esteem. And one way to tell if your self-esteem strategies are working is to get your friends to roast the fuck out of you just a little more than they did last time. And if you feel if you're laughing along with the jokes and everything's great, hey, all right, you're making some progress. If not, then maybe you can take a look at how your strategies could be more effective. Another one, this one's a bit more extreme. Getting rejected as a hobby by applying your interests in female attention and getting rejected is a big deal. This only really works if you have pretty high self-esteem already, because when you get rejected with pretty low self-esteem, it could be okay, but it could be like, oh man, I just feel like shit. Maybe have even a little bit worse self-esteem after that. But there's something insanely liberating in reality about getting rejected. I remember one year I was like fucking 20 or 21, 22, some shit. I finally got enough like mega balls to ask a bunch of girls out. I was like working at some summer camp or shit like that. And these were all girls roughly my age, and I was insanely intimidated by them. But I was going through a big like powerlifting thing, and I was like, fuck it, who gives a shit. I've stepped under bigger weights than fuck it, who cares? Let's find out. I was just had enough. So I asked a bunch of girls out in a row, not literally in a row, that have been funny. Almost all of them said yeah, but one of them said no. The one that said yeah, that was dope. It's cool. People saying yeah is kind of pretty sweet for your self-esteem. But one thing I really noticed was the girl that said no, she said no. And I was like, okay, no worries. I forgot how that conversation went. And I remember after that conversation, I was like, I'm still alive. Nothing's changed at all. And I didn't care about her. I never did. I could be rejected 1,000 times and it just wouldn't matter. Nothing is, I'm here to tell you, if no one ever told you this in your life, this is a big deal. When you get rejected by a female, precisely nothing happens. Nothing. Remember when you didn't have her before you asked? Same. Now you don't. Nothing changed. The only thing that changed is if she says yes, now shit's changed. But if she says no, the answer was no. If you never asked, what is it? You miss all the shots you don't take? Fact. So getting rejected, a lot of people have their self-esteem tied into kind of attractiveness, the opposite sex, same sex, whatever. We don't judge here. And when you get denied and you already have pretty decent self-esteem, it can be insanely liberating. And if you need that self-esteem to go higher, you just like ask a lot of people out consistently. And if you get the answer yes a ton, oh my God, super boosts your self-esteem. If you get the answer no a ton, it super boosts your self-esteem because you're liberated from the whole goddamn thing. You're like, oh my God, I'm fucking, it's like being really afraid to go into battle. Then the first bullet that's shot at you bounces the fuck off you because you're in like the world's best tank. And you're like, I can't, I'm unstoppable. And you turn the turret, you fire at that blows up and you're like, oh my God, either I blow you up or you can't blow me up. Legitimately what happens. If you have low self-esteem to begin with, this is a very, very tough thing. It can still help, but very tough. If you already have pretty decent self-esteem, going to get your ass rejected is fucking unbelievable. Also, another side note, huge side benefit, it's not even a side benefit, is if you have approach anxiety, which I'm sure many people do, I sure should do if I had to go talk to somebody randomly in a mall, mostly because I think I'm inconveniencing them. Not that I think they're going to reject me, which I clearly don't give a fuck about anymore. But when you get rejected, you begin to develop an insane resilience. Like you're like, oh, it doesn't matter. Nothing matters. And then your approach anxiety for the next person and person after that and after that falls to almost nothing. And then when you don't have approach anxiety, you're going to get laid sooner or later. It's just a matter of statistics, large numbers. And also you get to practice your swag and practice different approaches because you just don't care. 99% of the reason most guys aren't getting it is because they don't just go over there and ask for that shit. Not literally, but start conversations, etc. But for the movies, girls will almost never come talk to you. At least if you look like me, they for sure never will come talk to you. Scott, the video guy, you ever heard girls kind of try to open you up a little bit? Yeah, it's because you're good looking. When I was good looking in high school, I had a bunch of bitches open me up and I did nothing about it. Well, we've talked about that before, haven't we? Yeah. Live and learn, and you get loves. What? So that's how you test your self-esteem and potentially even improve it, but definitely a pretty good test. All right. That's all really good. Self-esteem has a value. It's real. But I'm here to detract something away from self-esteem. I'm here to take a bit of its power away from it. And I'm here to reduce the level of control that self-esteem on the margins has over you. Because we're really supposed to care a lot about our self-esteem. And in some situations, that's awesome. And in others, it just doesn't fit. So let's peel back a little bit, get a little intellectual really quick. Not that we haven't been doing that. What's wrong with self-esteem? I can think of at least three things. One, the self is largely an illusion to begin with. The fuck does that mean? Buddhists and shit say it, and you're supposed to be this thing. If you're a hippie, you're like, yeah, man. Like, yeah, self's kind of a myth, bro. You're like, yeah, man, for sure, dude. Some shit like that. What does that really mean? What exactly is the self? In some sense, it's an idea. Like you have an idea that there's a self in there somewhere. But if we dig deeper, the self is actually just a fallacy. It's the homunculus fallacy. It's like what's in your brain is like a little dude that's pulling levers, but what's in his brain, it's another little dude that's pulling levers. That's all fucking nonsense. I'll get to a deeper example of why the self is largely an illusion, but trying even to define what is the self is really, really, really tough. There is an idea generator in your brain that you don't control. There is an ability for you to remember past ideas it's generated, like a second ago, half a second ago, right now. And there's an ability to parse those ideas, but there's not seemingly a self that's doing that. That also happens automatically. And if you think you're super in charge of your thoughts, that's also not true. You can have an effect on your thoughts, but it's fluid. You have thoughts, you have ideas about them, or you have ideas about them exist in your head. And then ideas are modified in one way or another, sometimes consciously, but consciousness is really just a remembering of past ideas and having the concept of a self. But the concept of a self is a little bit different than there is really such a thing as the self. Like if you have really high self-esteem and you're really proud, I'm going to talk about this later, but what is it specifically that you're really proud of? What is the real onus of you? You could say it's my soul, but the soul is make-believe nonsense from religion. Sorry. I don't mean to offend anyone. It's just true. So we're not so sure about the self being a big deal anyway. So we're going to put that aside for a second. There's something to the self for sure, but it's mostly illusory. So investing a lot into self-esteem, at some point when you realize in various forms that the self is a bit overrated, well, it's kind of hard to attach a whole lot to it, like esteem. Number two, self-esteem is a curious thing that is a holdover from our ancestral, much more simple-brained past. Self-esteem is generally a social emotion, which is to say self-esteem is almost valueless to like a lizard or a turtle or some shit that doesn't deal with other social animals in its group. Self-esteem is really just designed as an internal barometer of where you are in the dominance hierarchy. And so if you have low self-esteem, you're basically telling people I'm worthless, get the fuck away from me. High self-esteem is like I'm the man, get in here and get this, and everything in between. That emotion of self-esteem, and it really is an emotion, or perception or idea of self-esteem is a bidirectional variable. So it's good and bad. And then people say, like, could you have good self-esteem or bad self-esteem? That's truly a thing you can feel. But in your calmer times, from an intellectual level, how the fuck can you, the insanely complex person that you are, be described as good or bad? Really? Just good or bad? Oh my God, there's so much more complexity to you. No doubt you've done wonderful things. No doubt you've done bad before I have. No doubt you're capable of many more wonderful things. No doubt you will err and fall in your future and maybe do even worse bad or stumble embarrassingly, turn on yourself. Who knows? That's all a thing. And what are you good at? Are you good at carpentry? Are you good at fixing people's jet skis? Are you good at computers? Are you good at just being yourself and having a good time? There's like 80 trillion variables which make you you, and you want to integrate all of them onto good and bad? That's kind of fucking weird. Like it's like someone, what is it that the Scott's video guy, you ever seen the movie Donnie Darko? I mean, I hated that movie for about 80 trillion reasons. As predictably, I hate most movies. But there was like a classroom thing where the teacher was trying to get them to like rate a bunch of stuff on like, I think it was like love and fear spectrum. And I think Donnie Darko was like, I don't think this is on any side of this. Love and fear does not explain this thing that we're talking about. And this is true as far as it goes. So when people are like, you have high self-esteem, low self-esteem, it's like, I'm supposed to integrate my whole value as a person into one single like up and down scale. It's kind of fucking weird. At the very least, not super descriptive. So if someone has really high self-esteem, it could be for weird, illusory reasons, or just for no reason at all. Again, the vast majority of people's self-esteem is genetically derived. Okay? Straight up. Self-esteem baseline. If it's real low to begin with, it just never gets that high. Even if you try, it gets maybe a little above average. If it's really high to begin with, life can fuck you completely in the ass for 40 years, and you're still like, hey, I've kind of got it. I'm kind of the man. Right? So what does that say about you? It's like, what, just have genetics for this thing? Not good or bad, I just feel a certain way. So the idea of self-esteem is just one variable that can map everything in your life onto, that doesn't have a lot of legs. And lastly, third issue with self-esteem, kind of what's wrong with it, is that concern for your esteem, as it kind of waves up and down, you're trying to get to wave up and kind of cushion it on the way down, can take away from other life priorities because it's just another thing to worry about in some sense. People are always worried about their self-esteem. Like there's a huge movement back in the day, I'm sure it's still around, in education. We're trying to really boost kids' self-esteem, mostly because it correlates with all those good things. They never do establish causation. Modern education is a fucking disaster. But we're really concerned about getting kids high self-esteem. Like, what about like teaching them to read and write properly and do mathematics and science and understand the world and be good people? There's so much to do with kids. If you put this huge importance on self-esteem and put it in the equation, maybe it deserves its place. But maybe for people of roughly average self-esteem, like, or already pretty high self-esteem, it's just another thing that's like, fucking self-esteem. Jesus Christ, like we're still talking about this thing. So that's definitely sort of three downsides of self-esteem, or three reasons that maybe we're putting too much into self-esteem. So maybe there's a conversation we can have here about moving beyond self-esteem, which is a trip to say. Here is some kind of intellectual framework for kind of visualizing beyond self-esteem. I'll tell you a few things. Here's one. You are neither good nor bad. You are neither capable nor incapable. You are neither valuable nor invaluable. Those variables do not apply to you. Technically speaking, you're a nanotech-based, isn't that cool? Yeah, one molecule by one molecule computation and production is what your body does. It's pretty sweet. Also, like, look at this. This is a real nano machine. Isn't that sweet? You know, like the computer looks fucking kind of outdated compared to this. It was fascinating, right? Like total articulation, total control, perceive everything around it, little hairs. I'm like, you ever try to look at your shit like, oh my God, who fucking built this? One hell of an intricate nanotech-based machine. And you are designed for roughly two things, computation and manipulation. That's what you are, a nanotech-based computation and manipulation machine. That's what you actually are. You're not good or bad. That thing you can't escape. You can't be like, well, I'm actually not a nanotech-based computation and manipulation machine. Bullshit. Yes, you are. That's literally what you are. And to that end, your past is that machine, because you could have some self-esteem about shit you used to be, like, oh, I'm so embarrassed, you used to be XYZ. Your past is history and it's unalterable. You can't do shit about your past. Again, if you have a good patent for a time machine, I'm always in. But you probably don't. So why are we worried about the past? Your future, you might be like really kind of anticipating your future and what that all means, is imaginary, literally. Every conversation about the future is literally imaginary. We do not have access to the future. And it doesn't reflect on you at all. Like, oh, I just feel like I have low self-esteem because I might not become like what I was meant to become in the future. Oh, okay, pretend time. I got it. So you're going to let pretend drag you down. Dope. So you got history is unalterable. No need to worry about that. The future is pretend make-believe. No need to worry about that. And your current priorities, really the only question, deep question in your life is, what am I going to do now? What's my shit right now? Those priorities that you ascertain for yourself, well, I'm going to go to school, I'm going to go to work, I'm going to eat my food, I'm going to do XYZ. They don't need you to consult your esteem to be slotted in. I don't know a single priority that you need to be like, hold on a sec. Let me figure out what kind of esteem I have first before doing this thing or not doing this thing. What? If you want to get leaner, for example, you do the diet. Low self-esteem, you do the diet. Moderate self-esteem, you do the diet. High self-esteem, wait, do you still want to get lean? You do the diet. You're just a thing that does things. Esteem and how you feel about yourself is all very, very, very secondary. And mostly designed as a signaling mechanism to others. It doesn't even help you that much. Self-esteem, again, like from point number 3 in that downside, it's just like this extra thing. They're like, the fuck do we even care about this thing? Can you imagine having like a fucking, it's 2035 and you have like a cyborg android fucking robot next to you in a fucking firefight and you're really tired. You're like, you think we're going to make it out of this? He's like, yes, I assess that as probable. Like, how are you feeling about yourself right now? Do you feel like you have high self-esteem? He'd be like, what? Fuck, I'm a robot, man. If they program self-esteem into me, it'd be a fucking waste of my time. It's extra computation that I do not need. Now, it doesn't mean you need to ignore your self-esteem. It's a real thing that you have. I just like putting a lot of weight into it. Like, my self-esteem is so important. No, it's not. What's important is the fuck you do now and tomorrow and the day after. By the way, you don't control any of that. So really the question is, what are you doing right now? Which means all you ever have to do is just do your best at being your best instead of worrying about your deeper worth. Like, that's a pretty good way to become depressed, is worry about your deep worth all the fucking time. I'm kidding, sort of. All you got to do is your best. Did you suck? That's in the past. Who gives a shit? Now do better. Were you great before? Now it's in the past. Who gives a shit? Now do better. What do you think you'll be able to make for yourself in the future? Doesn't matter. All pretend. Do your fucking best. Oh, and if you want to do well in your future, you're going to have to do your goddamn best now, right? Makes sense. How did I get to all this? Let me tell you a little personal story. Yawn, fucking bullshit, tired aside. Here we go. You can just feel free to log off now if you don't want all this nonsense. I've gone real deep down the self-esteem rabbit hole. Real deep over my whole life, and especially recently to some extent. So I can ask myself questions. For example, as I'm recording this video currently, probably forever, I am not an IFBB professional bodybuilder. I've taken as close as second place in a show in which first place would have given me contention for that title. So, I could be all butthurt about it. But I can ask myself the question, am I less worthwhile? Should I have lower self-esteem than otherwise? Because I'm not an IFBB professional bodybuilder. Bodybuilding my whole goddamn life at this point, sucked away 20 fucking years of my life. Better have something to show for it, right? Wouldn't it be better? Well, hold on a second. Let's do some comparisons. What do I mean by less worthwhile? Less worthwhile than an imaginary universe in which I have a pro card? Maybe. Like, first of all, we're imagining things now. We're fucking delusional. Not a good idea. Stick to the real world. But even if we imagine an alternate universe in which everything is the same except I'm IFB Pro, I'm probably dumber in that universe because steroids make you dumber, and I've taken more of them to achieve my pro status. And I probably have less money because my work in bodybuilding gives me negative money, and my work on all of my other projects at RP give me infinity money. So like me, bodybuilding is just a giant waste of everyone's time, my own included at this point. And actually, as I talk to you right now, the very steroids in my brain are making me have a fucking terrible time in my own head for the last fucking months and months from now because I'm competing a bunch. So like, yeah, all of a sudden IFB Pro doesn't sound that great. But again, it doesn't even matter because it's all pretend. It's all nonsense fantasy bullshit. So should I feel bad that I'm not a pro? Like, bad compared to what? A pretend fantasy universe? Like, if you tell a psychiatrist that, they're like, yeah, let me write you a script for that. You need an antipsychotic. You're out of your fucking mind. Then another question we can ask is, would I be less worthwhile than something real in this actual universe? No, I don't think so. What does that even mean? Like, and maybe if I'm jealous of other people that are pros and I'm not a pro, I can like raise the jealousy bar even further, arbitrarily far. Watch this. I'm not Ronnie Coleman. I haven't won 8 Mr. Olympias. And by the way, some of you more accomplished folks will realize this. As soon as you level up to a new level of accomplishment, your brain fucks with you and tries to reference you as the bottom of the now new pyramid you have to climb. So as soon as you turn pro, people stop congratulating you that you're pro and they go, when's your next show? Your pro show. You don't do so well at that. People are like, man, this guy's a fucking shit pro. He doesn't belong on that stage. You win a pro show, half the people are like, man, he looked like shit. He shit is a fucking gift. The other half of the people are like, dude, you're the fucking man. Olympia time, right? And then you get to Olympia, you take 10th. Everyone thinks you fucking suck again, except for close friends and family and just your fans. You win the Olympia and people tell you it was a one-off. And you look like shit and it was a fucking gift. You win the Olympia 7 times, Phil Heath, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and you're not the best ever because Ronnie Coleman and Lee Haney, they won the Olympia the most number of times. You're Lee Haney, you win the Olympia 8 times, but then Ronnie Coleman does it later and nobody even remembers who the fuck you were, Lee Haney. You guys see where I'm going with this? And it just never ends. You can always compare yourself to somebody better. 100%. I might as well compare myself to Elon Musk. Now I'm fucking poor too. So if you go deep inside the self-esteem rabbit hole of like, okay, I'm going to start comparing myself to alternate universes and to different people, it is a road to insanity. And there is no amount of achievement that's going to be enough if you have the mindset of, well, I better reference my self-esteem to like, like things I should be able to do and people I should be better than. Make-believe nonsense. The whole tree, the whole branch of thoughts I just had, we just cut that right the fuck off and be missing absolutely nothing, which is kind of how I summarize my whole career up to this point. Now, I've also asked myself the opposite question. This is going to sound cocky as fuck. Fuck, whatever. Am I more worthwhile than otherwise or something? Again, that's interesting, right? Difficult to even phrase this. Am I more worthwhile because I'm literally a famous millionaire, which is literally true at this point. It's fucking weird to say. It's fucking true. I've tried to put this hat on and reason through this a bunch more recently because over the last year or so, the shit's taken off like wild. Money and especially YouTube fame is just fucking nuts. And I really try to sit with this. And I say something to myself like, Mike, you're amazing. You completely blew out all and any expectations you had of yourself. It was real talk, fellas. I never had plans for this shit. I wanted to have a job as a college professor and train a few clients on the side. I wanted to make $100,000 a year, which I still think is a lot of money and always will. And that was just going to be in a little house and pay off the mortgage and have a family. It'll be great. And now I can't walk through an airport without someone being like, you're Dr. Mike. And I'm like, oh, that's right. Oh my fucking God, I am that guy. What the fuck? So I tried telling myself like, oh my God, you really did it. You really did it. And in times of kind of extreme doubt and anxiety, when I'm like fucking mentally ill off steroids, it can help a little bit. Cause like when I get really worried and prep, I'm like, oh my fuck, I'm going nuts. This is the hardest thing I've ever done. And then I think back like, okay, all right. Where's let's take stock of my life. Okay, I already accomplished every goal I ever set out. Now I'm just in bonus round number 5 at this point. It takes the pressure off, for sure. That can help. But in calmer times, I literally feel pretty close to nothing when I try to be proud of my success. Because what I start doing, and this comes back to self-esteem, is I start trying to ascribe that success to something inside of me, some deeper worth that I have. That's something that, Dr. Mike, that thing you have, that's the thing that makes you good. That's the thing from which you should draw your self-esteem and feel proud of. You should feel proud because you got that thing. What the fuck is that thing? I can go down a quick list for you guys that I wrote up and dispel every single one of these in hand as having any mysticism whatsoever. Is it because of my IQ? My dad is an atmospheric physicist. The fuck was I supposed to have a fucking low IQ? That's unlikely. Did I earn that in some weird? No, what? I was just born into it. When I was 7, I was talking to my dad's friends and they're like, let's get fucking, he's out there. What the fuck? He should be in school with the 12th graders, some shit. Then I had my ups and downs intellectually, but then eventually I fucking got to where I was supposed to be. And when I ended up getting sort of the intellectual kind of like meat and potatoes that I was capable of, wrote a bunch of books, blah, 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 world conferences, it never occurred to me as like, oh, wow, yeah. I was kind of like, oh, yeah, like this makes sense. And why wouldn't it? But again, I didn't earn any of that. I was just born into this shit. Which was like, as soon as I got medicated for attention deficit disorder, math was the easiest thing anyone had ever showed me ever. A lot of people can say that. I don't take any credit for that. I can't. That ain't me. That's something in there doing it, but it just kind of pops out correct solutions. So it's not that. What about effort? All the effort I ever put in is already done. It's already been put in. So I have trouble like feeling proud of all the effort I did. Like literally, guys, literally, I'll sit there and be like, oh, you worked so hard at this. And it means nothing to me. So, well, I guess I did work hard. Like, it already happened though. Now I'm just sitting here in the middle of a room. That hat doesn't fit. Some of the success I've had is due to luck. But like, how the fuck am I supposed to take credit for that? I'm not lucky. This is, by the way, if any of you think anyone is lucky or can be lucky, luck is not a cogent concept. You can't have luck follow you around. This is nonsense. So even if I've been lucky in the past, that doesn't give me anything to take with me for the future. So that doesn't work. Is it because I've done a lot of insight and planning? Is it because I architected my life willfully? In part, that's true, but I kind of always do that anyway. It doesn't seem magical or special. So then I make the realization that outside of the literal things that have made me successful, like, being smart, working hard, chance and all that other shit, there's just nothing more to my success. There's nothing super deep about my success. It just kind of is what it is. Now, look, success is dope as fuck. I'm not spitting that in the face. But does success reflect on some deeper intrinsic je ne sais quoi, that kind of worth, that esteem generator? Is there something in me that's just that shit that makes me me? It makes me awesome. It makes the next thing I'm going to try, I'm just going to knock out of the park. No, not even fucking close, man. It just is what it is. And people could tell you you're the fucking man. You can try to tell yourself you're the man, but at the end of the day, shit just kind of is as it is. And so trying to draw your self-esteem from just the calm structure of the universe, it feels like we're pretending it at that point. And I do the usual shit where, yeah, I'm the man or whatever, but I also jack off alone in the bathroom at night, sometimes while crying. It's therapeutic. So, you can't get too high on a horse about who the fuck you are, because none of us are that great to begin with compared to our other fellow humans. So, okay, you're the fucking man in some respects. In other respects, like, you have a few too many pimples and back hair is what I'm trying to say. So there's kind of, anytime I try to lift myself up, like, oh, Mike, you're really the man. It's like, yeah, in a bunch of ways you are. Slow clap. Very explainable ways, nothing mystical. And in a bunch of other ways, you're kind of suck. And that's also a thing that doesn't have to because I'm unable to draw high esteem for my accomplishments. Luckily, I'm also not able to draw low self-esteem on my failures. Like, I failed out of college, I think twice. Does that bother me? Like in a conscious way? No, it happened. I don't know. Like, am I 5'6" instead of 6'1"? Yeah. Am I beat up about it? I didn't get the memo that I was supposed to be. Like, oh, you're short. That means you should have lower self-esteem. Why? Because girls like you less. Okay. I'm supposed to be worried about that too? Like, well, you're supposed to be worried about it. So a lot of these conversations come down to this, that if you're looking for something super special, super deep, because self-esteem is supposed to be the self, right? That's what you love. High self-esteem means the self is really awesome. If you're looking for something super special and unique and unalterable and valuable deep inside of yourself, that X factor you can be deeply proud and derive your self-esteem from, I just don't think it exists. Sure shit, I'm missing it. Scott the video guy, you got one of those things that deep down you're like the man and you keep coming. Definitely. It's a sad conversation. As a matter of fact, I just worry about my failures all the time. So this kind of mental journey, maybe some of the realizations of it, or I'm just describing my genetic proclivities anyway after the fact, is why I really just don't have a self-esteem anymore. I used to have bad self-esteem. Distinctly. I remember that in middle school, high school, most of my life. And then I distinctly had a higher self-esteem phase of I'm the fucking man. Fuck everybody, which was sweet. But I think at a certain level of accomplishment until you think you're going to do this, but then you do that times 1,000 and then that times 1,000. And you're like, I don't even know what the fuck's going on anymore. You kind of lose touch with that internal value bullshit that you start to figure out is bullshit to begin with. And so the way I reason about it, the way I think about it currently is I just am. And the I in me is just the GPT running its bullshit. It's got memory. There's not even really a me in there. A me is a secretion of this whole process. I'm a sub-process of the universe. Literally, everyone is. And what I know is that I act in accordance to arrange a better future for myself. I choose my actions based on some intersection of my abilities and my needs. If I fail, I regroup. If I succeed, I double down or check that off the list and go, okay, what's next? And that's kind of it. As far as how do I see myself in all of this? I mostly don't. I'm usually just too busy building my desired future or kvetching like a fucking Jew to worry about what the fuck is going on with that deep part of me, inner worth me. My humble advice to you, I promise I'll shut the fuck up shortly after this, is the following. If your self-esteem is low, work to raise it ultra high by becoming better and appraising yourself more charitably and surrounding yourself with people that are also fucking dope and challenging yourself and fucking failing and dragging through the mud and failing again and then challenging yourself and then winning and then winning and then winning. It'll boost your shit up. No problem. It's fucking tough, but it's worth it. Unless you like having low self-esteem, and fuck that. Once your self-esteem is ultra high, I highly recommend soaking in it until it loses its meaning. Soaking is important. I might have to make a fucking lecture about that at some point. How important it is to soak in your accomplishment. I remember I won the geography bee at my school when I was 8th grade. And I walked in my next class, I still had the medal on. And this one kid who liked to bully me told me I was a letter F and I should take it off. But I didn't take it off. Maybe the first time I ever stood up for myself. It just felt good having it on because I was like, no, I won this. Fuck you. So soaking in the fact that you were better than you were before, really relishing in your victory. That's a big deal. Only through that soaking and you're getting better are you going to feel way better. And then your self-esteem climbs and climbs and climbs. After soaking in it long enough, just if you're really, imagine low self-esteem as you're ultra hot, uncomfortably hot. You're ah. Your accomplishments, the shit that boosts your self-esteem is a pool temperature water. Jump into the pool. Oh my God, does it feel good? And if you jump right out, you're still hot. It didn't do it. You got to soak in there for a bit. Core body temperature is too high. You got to soak. And once you soak, it feels so goddamn good. And that soaking brings you down to a normal temperature and then you're not hot anymore. But then when you sit in the pool for longer at some point, and if you're still enough and there's no other screaming kids or old people or whatever the fuck is in the pool, and there's no waves, you actually can't even feel the water anymore. So in just the same way, if you have shit self-esteem and you raise it, you stay at high self-esteem long enough, really let yourself feel all of it. Once you feel enough of it, you just don't feel it much anymore. And that doesn't mean you miss it or that it's bad. You just have a lot of equanimity. You just have a lot of Silence, which is fucking dope. And then you get to work on the real shit, which is being present to your deep tasks in the moment, actually living your life. No longer doing shit so that you feel better in your own head, just doing shit that you want to fucking do. Instead of concerning yourself all the time with your deeper worth. Because that shit is super fucking important until you really feel your deep worth for a while. And I felt more than enough of that shit. After that, it becomes a distraction. And what really is important is the thing you're doing right now. And as some of you who have gone down to Eastern Path might have noticed, the thing you're doing right now is the only thing. Anything else, much from that, is in some sense a distraction. And then eventually your self-esteem will matter to you as much as the girls you liked in middle school. You're like, oh yeah, that used to be a thing. I don't know. So that's the title of this video. I don't really have self-esteem anymore, which is dope. But I do recognize that you can't just pretend your way into not having it. You have to earn that shit. And the best way to earn it is to jack your shit up, ride high for a long time, really feel that, and you'll get a significant amount of peace. If you ask Bill Gates or something, I don't know, I'm assuming that if you ask him, like, are you proud of your accomplishments? I don't know what he'd say. I suspect he might be like, well, they're super nice on paper, right? Like, yeah, but do you feel proud of them? I did. What about now? Like, I just am. And the just am, that's the best goddamn way to be. But you got to earn your way to it. Low self-esteem, high self-esteem, no self-esteem. Give it some thought. Maybe I'm just insanely ranting to no one. By the way, just for the record, there is no Scott the Video Guy. I do all the filming myself. And I'm an awesome ventriloquist. I'm kidding. Scott, I love you. Plot twist. Oh, I hated that stupid plot. Oh my God. Oh my God. I hate Fight Club so goddamn much. Guys, if you do, not a time machine, as soon as full immersion virtual reality is a thing, I'm getting the GPT to throw me into Fight Club and I get all my current powers and abilities. I'm just going to beat the shit out of everyone at Fight Club and be like, Fight Club is over, you socialist assholes. And if one of you motherfuckers blows up them credit card buildings, I'm coming for everybody. Peace. And then I just leave. The GPT is like, wow, that's what you needed out of that. You're like, yep, that's it. Shut that down. On to the next. Anyway, I'm just ranting. See you guys next time.